guys, welcome back. Tonight we're going to be talking about a new series that we're starting here. It's about basically hits and misses of book adaptations into movies. So I'll get Michelle's going to be leading that on that because I don't background. Michelle is a teacher, an English major as well back in college, and very what's the word?
Voracious reader?
Voracious reader, yes. She is definitely a huge reader. She is the reader in this household. Our bedroom is pretty much a library, so.
It's true.
But, before we get started on that, we really want, if you love what we're doing, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, whenever we have those, exactly, whenever we have those new videos come out, you'll know about that. We really appreciate it. So, Michelle, let's what movie adaptation are we going to be talking about today?
Tonight we are talking about The Hunger Games.
Bom, bom, bom.
So this is probably one of my favorite adaptations ever because I love these books so much. I did actually read these, and this is going to sound really hipstery, but I did actually read all of these before the first movie came out. So this is what we're going to do tonight, and when I refer to special features and stuff, just know that I'm referring to special features in some cases that are specifically in this edition of the Blu-rays in this case. So this is the complete four film collection, so if you are looking for some of the stuff that I'm talking about and it's not in yours, it might be because you don't have this edition.
One tangent on this thing. Be very careful with this because even if you have it really held really well, the box is really loose in it, so it just comes right out. That has been lost to the floor a couple of times, so just forewarning there. Please be careful.
All right, so I'm going to start out today talking about the hits, so the things that basically the book did and the movie replicated it really well in some form or fashion. Now, I do want to preface this by saying, when I get to the misses, I am not going to be just nitpicking every single little detail. I'm going to pick kind of the biggest things that I noticed and some of the overarching things that I felt got left out and may have affected later another movie because it was in another book. So we'll come to that when we get there. But just know that I'm not dragging this through the mud and nitpicking it mercilessly. All right, so the first thing that when I start watching this movie that I see is District 12. So we know that District 12 is supposed to be the furthest away from the capital. It's supposed to be really bleak. People are hungry. People are poor. People don't have good living conditions. And the moment that you get on camera and start seeing District 12, you see that immediately.
Absolutely.
The setting is established perfectly. You can get that sense of just absolute dejection. I mean, there's nothing there. It just looks sad. And then by the other side of that, when you get to the Capitol, it's a perfect contrast. I mean, the contrast is ridiculous because the Capitol is crazy. I mean, everything is big and grand and wildly colored and perfect. And everyone in it just kind of goes along with it.
And the food is great, and medicine cures you in a few hours, and it's pretty spectacular.
Everything's miraculous, except they have no appreciation for it.
Absolutely.
So then beyond just the setting, the casting, you have to say such great things about the casting in this because you get a very good sense from the book and the way that Suzanne Collins describes her characters in the book of what they should act like and in some cases what they should look like. And I felt like they really nailed that well with this. There are some small, again, nitpicky details you could really get into if you wanted to. Like Katniss is probably a lot taller and broader than she should be. She was supposed to be kind of a scrawny little runt. But, I mean, Jennifer Lawrence nails the role in every other way, so I think I can give them that one.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, Haymitch, played by Woody Harrelson, is perfect. He gives it the perfect attitude, does a great drunk impersonation.
He really does.
Effie does a great job. I know Elizabeth Banks really pushed hard to get that role, so that was something that was important to her, and it definitely shows in the way that she puts it out there.
She's very garish looking at the beginning.
Yes, we'll come to costuming in a second, but yeah, for sure. So then Cinna as well, I mean, down to the gold eyeliner they put on him that they talk about in the books. Cinna with Lenny Kravitz was great.
Yeah, I remember when Cinna came out, whenever I read these books and whenever seeing that movie on the screen for the first time, it's like, I can't remember a character that I had pictured so perfectly in my mind that just was up on the screen. It was perfect.
Yeah.
That was perfection.
They did an excellent job visually on that. President Snow, even though you don't see him a lot in the books, I felt like what impression you do get from him is really well shown through Donald Sutherland. I mean, he's terrifyingly gruff, and I think that comes across really well. And of course, he's a lot more important in this, which I'll come to a little later as well. I'm going to talk about some of the things that are different out of necessity from the movie to the book. And then, of course, you know, Gale, Peeta, they're done really well. I think Peeta's probably another one who physically doesn't exactly match his description, but he does the role so well. He's so lovable and does such a good job that I think you can't help but enjoy his character. And then Rue was just astonishingly perfect for that role.
Yeah.
I mean, your heart breaks watching her. She's so sweet. She's so cute. And then, I mean, if you're watching this, you know she died. So I'm not telling you anything you didn't know. But just that death scene was heart-wrenching.
Absolutely.
So going through all that, we kind of talked about costuming a little bit. But costuming in this, I mean, it's another thing like with the setting. They have to figure out ways to show all these things that in the book they have time to tell us. So we can see in District 12, everybody's in really drab clothes, things that look like they're old, they're worn out, they're, you know, all the colors look washed out, like they've been, you know, run through the ringer quite a few times. And then you get to the Capitol and they have, you know, crazy colored hair. I mean, you talked about Effie with her giant pink cotton candy hair and her crazy shoes and all of these outfits that she wears. And I mean, you can't get a better example of just excess than that they have all this money to do these cosmetic surgeries all the time and change themselves constantly.
Which, you know, I think that's in stock because I don't know how many, you know, I can't go a day without seeing somebody with pink hair. Although if you're going to do it, keep it maintained, please. You know, just, that's our little PSA for today. Exactly.
Okay. The other thing about me, aside from being a book nerd, is that I'm a super huge film score nerd. I love film scores, and I have loved them since I was in high school. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was, but I have loved film score since I was in high school, and I feel like the score in this is wonderful. They do a great job of creating some really iconic themes, including the Capitol's anthem, or I guess it's technically the national anthem, but I mean, the moment you hear that music and the timpanis, is that what those are? The big giant drums, right? Yeah, as soon as you hear that, I mean, you know exactly where you are, you know exactly what it is. It expresses that grandness and does a great job. And then also, you know, music in District 12, they have the sad, the melancholy, just those notes of just
depression.
Depression. There's nothing there. So it's really awesome. There's also a part I love when they get to the Capitol, when it's kind of the first shot you get of the Capitol citizens up close in mass, and they're walking down the street, and there's this lady with these pink dogs and stuff. And the music there is just weird, which is perfectly appropriate because these people you're looking at are weird. They look crazy. And so that music perfectly encapsulates that, and I think they did a good job with it.
It's almost as if like you're looking at it from, you know, like someone like Katniss or Peeta who has never seen anything like this before in person, and it's like this almost descent into madness, like where are we, what is this going on?
Well, I think that's important to remember too, talking about things from their perspective. I mean, the book is written from Katniss's perspective. It's first person narrative, so we get everything through her eyes. And so I feel like even though it's impossible to really do that well in a movie, especially a story like this, they do a good job of giving you those moments where you kind of feel like you're seeing it that way, even though you're not seeing it necessarily from her perspective.
Absolutely.
So now I'm going to jump into some specific moments in the movie that I felt like they really nailed. And so some of this will kind of go back and forth time-wise. I'm not necessarily going in order at all times, I don't think, but I tried. So first thing is the video at the reaping. So in the book, they do talk about there being this video, but again, in the book, you have time to build all this background. You have time to explain what happened, and Katniss tells you all that in her narration. Of course, in a movie, unless you really want a really boring movie with a lot of narration, you're not going to do that much.
Exposition.
Yeah, do you want some exposition? I don't know if I should have done that.
No copyright there.
Anyway,
you did it for like 5 seconds, you're good.
Honest movie trailer for Frozen. Just go find it. It's good.
Absolutely. We'll put that link down there in the description.
So anyway, the video at the reaping does a good job of building that background that you don't really otherwise get. They do a really quick blurb at the beginning of the movie, just kind of briefly explaining things, but I think that in a way the video in the movie actually does a little bit better job of that. And it's narrated by President Snow, so you get a little extra Donald Sutherland's voice, always a plus.
Mm-hmm.
But it does a good job of that, establishing things. And then at this point, I mean, Effie's in front of a bunch of people who go day to day not sure if they're going to have enough to eat, and if they're all going to make it through the day, if someone's going to get hurt in the mines. And Effie's just up here living her tone-deaf life.
Mm-hmm.
She has no idea that she sounds like an absolute imbecile to them. She has no idea that she looks ridiculous to them, and that all they can see when they look at her is money, money, money that they'll never have.
Like, she looks like the Joker in that scene almost.
Yeah, she's got like the white face and the bright makeup and the pink eyelashes.
For the honor of sending your kids to die horrible deaths.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great job, Effie.
And then she's all indignant when they're like, when she's like, District 12's very first volunteer. Like, well, yeah, it's their first volunteer.
It's like, all of them are sitting there thinking, it's not me.
No kidding.
I get to survive another year, maybe.
So speaking of that, Prim's name comes out of the bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Katniss volunteers, and I don't care how many times I see this movie, I choke up every single time because it is perfect. Katniss's reaction, her facial expressions. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence just kills it at expressing all of this stuff without actually saying anything.
Absolutely.
Oh, I get choked up every time I watch that. So once we actually get to the Capitol, we have interviews with Caesar Flickerman, and he does interview all of the tributes, but we get a really abbreviated piece of that in the version of the movie that you're just seeing here. So like I said, there are some bonus features in this that are really specific to this box set. There's an extra disc at the very end that's got extra stuff on it that was never included in a set before this. And some of them are deleted scenes specifically for the first Hunger Games. And I don't know, did they have any Hunger Games deleted scenes on the first discs?
Honestly, I cannot remember.
I don't think so. It seems like we were looking for them and they weren't there.
It's been a minute since we went through, whenever we were doing for this video, we watched this and then we watched the deleted scenes. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there were any deleted scenes with the actual...
Yeah, I don't think they're on the original bonus disc for the first movie. I don't think there were any. But there are on the extra bonus disc that has extra stuff for all 4 movies.
Yeah.
So anyway, in this version, those deleted scenes, there's actually an extended scene. And it's a pretty long scene with a bunch of interviews that actually go the full interview. So you see a full interview with Marvel and Glimmer and Kato and Clove and Foxface and Rue. And you actually get to listen to all of the things that they said and not just the little peek that you get at them in the movie, in the theatrical version. And honestly, some of those are really eye-opening. Some of them are jaw-dropping, the way that they react to things, and especially the careers that talk about how they volunteered and how it's something they wanted to do ever since they were little kids. I mean, just to think about your life's ambition when you're a little kid is to go kill other kids in an arena for glory.
It's like saying, like, I watched, like, for me, it was Michael Jordan, for probably, and also Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. But, you say, like, I want to, do that, and I want to, play in the NBA and hit the game-winning shot in the finals, and they're sitting there like, I wanted to be on there and kill somebody. Like, that's
just, it's the same thing to them. It's weird.
Crazy.
So anyway, that's a really cool deleted scene. If you've not seen that and you have access to that disc, you should definitely go check it out. And Katniss's fear before the games begin. So that last moment, she's with Senna, he's gotten her dressed, she's about to go up in the tube to actually go into the arena, and you just watch Katniss, Jennifer Lawrence, just shaking through that whole scene. I mean, there's just a constant of her the whole time, and just the fear in her eyes and on her face is just so well done, because I mean, Katniss in the book is absolutely terrified, and this
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, and I mean, and again, that's another moment where Jennifer Lawrence had to say a lot with her face that she couldn't say in narration in the book. Because I mean, you're gonna lose some stuff when you have a first-person narrator in a book and you're trying to make it into a movie. There's just stuff that you can't do unless you can act your heart out like that. And in that moment, she definitely does. So when the games get started, we get the bloodbath at the cornucopia. And that's a scene that in the book is extremely brutal. I'll come back to some talk about brutality in this later. But I think they do a great job of showing how many kids die, how many die quickly and horribly, without spending a lot of screen time on any individual death. I mean, there are a couple scenes, like you see somebody get stabbed, you see blood go, and then it cuts. And so it's not really overly graphic. I mean, it is graphic, but it doesn't spend so much time on it that it feels gory, I guess.
And I do know that from the special features that was a artistic decision from the director to make sure that they didn't quite, spend so much time on the fact that, kids are basically being murdered on screen. And so, I mean, probably for, you know, a lot of people's stomachs, that's probably the right call to make in that situation, when you're even if it's not necessarily, like you'll cover later, as true to what was actually depicted in the book.
And I think that you have to keep in mind, like, this is they market this as a young adult book, and a lot of teenagers read this, but this is written at like a 4th or 5th grade reading level. And so this is a lot of middle grade kids, so we're talking like 5th or 8th grade read this. I mean, and if you're trying to market a movie that those kids are going to go see, that would be a lot to show a kid. So while I'm going to talk about some misses, I think brutality-wise, that I think may not have necessarily been worth it, but for me, they were so iconic in the book that I kind of missed them, that I could see why they didn't do it.
Although, you know, unless you had my childhood, I was watching R-rated movies at like ages 5 or 6.
So the next thing is the fire attack, when the game makers actually create the fire to drive Katniss and the other tributes together. That was really well done. And she gets hit by fireballs and, you know, is attacked. She gets burned really badly. And I think they do a good job, because she knows in the book, she starts out thinking it's just a regular fire, like some stupid tribute had accidentally lit a fire, and then realizes that the fire is too perfect and that it's following her too well, and then they start shooting fireballs at her. And so I think they do a good job of showing all of that, and I think it was cool, and this is something I'll talk about more later too, that you get to see the game maker sort of putting these things into action, but again, I'll come back to it. So when Katniss finally finds Rue, after she gets attacked by tracker jackers and uses them to attack the other tributes, she gets to Rue, and their relationship is so beautiful. I mean, so well done. Their screen chemistry was wonderful, and the feeling that you get of Katniss and Rue being like Katniss and Prim to some extent is really sweet. They did a good job of paralleling that. And another bonus scene that is in this set again, in that extra disc, is actually an extended set of scenes between Katniss and Rue that incorporates the things that are in the theatrical version, but has a lot of extra conversations, and I think contributes even more to that feeling that Rue was like another Prim to her. And so I think you almost feel a little bit more for her after you've seen that, even if you have read the books. So it's just neat to see.
Yeah, it was very sisterly. Some boy talk in there.
Yeah.
It was very sweet.
Yeah, it was a really sweet moment where they're talking and they pull the covers up over their head and tell each other, Rue tells her a secret and they pull them down.
Yeah.
Then, of course, their plot to, go and destroy all of the supplies that the couriers had hoarded by the lake. So Katniss goes and blows up the food. And as far as executing a scene pretty much exactly how it's described, I mean, her watching Fox Face come, beat the trap, figuring out what the trap is, and then deciding to shoot the apples down. I mean, that pretty much goes down, shot for shot in the movie. There's some things around that it misses, but as far as that actual moment and how that looked, wonderful. They did a really good job. Which then, of course, leads up to really sad stuff like Rue's death, which, again, was executed absolutely beautifully. And I think that's all I have to say about that. It was exactly like it should have been. And Katniss singing to her and the white light going white, and it's just heart-wrenching.
Absolutely.
So then, after that, shortly, she gets to go and look for Peeta. And she finds Peeta, and the one thing she talks about in the book is how he's so camouflaged so well that she literally can't see him until he smiles or opens his eyes. And I think they did that really well. I do remember looking at some bonus features, and Josh Hutcherson, that's right? I'm just like,
wow, we just blanked on that one.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
I don't think we have, this does not have the credits on it, I don't think.
Anyway, there was a part in the bonus features where he said how absolutely miserable it was because of how long he had to lay there like that filming those scenes. So kudos to him for sitting through it because it looked awesome.
Well, yeah, if I got paid a bunch of money, I'd probably do that too.
And then at the very end when they have to take down Cato, I think as far as actually, him choking Peeta and then Peeta telling Katniss to shoot the back of his hand and everything, that all was executed really, really well. And so that scene went down, I think, as it should. And I think Cato also got an extra little moment there where he kind of gets to say that he suddenly realizes that he was made for only one thing, to bring glory to his district, and he realizes he was always going to die because Katniss had to take him out. So that was a good scene. And then, of course, eating the berries at the end, that was another scene where it captured a moment really well. So I think they did a good job with that. Movie versus book, there's a huge ton of things they missed. But to me, these were things that I felt like were either essential or somehow messed with the future of those movies in a little way.
But you know, also want to make the point too that, you know, just because we say they missed, you know, we understand. There's a lot of these, you know, there's a big understanding as to why, and just because it's a miss doesn't mean that we, you know, we don't love this movie. It is, you know, a movie we probably go to like easily 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah, this is a favorite of ours, and so this is not a reflection on the actual quality of the movie.
And you know, we understand that, you know, book adaptations, they're called adaptations for a reason. You have to adapt them to the film format, and that means some stuff either ends up on the cutting room floor or gets changed. It's just fact of life. So, yeah.
All right, so Mrs. So this is one that specifically bothers me because of how important the thing itself is. So in the book, Madge, this character, it's supposed to be the mayor's daughter, gives her the Mockingjay pin. I'm not sure why exactly, other than maybe time, money, they may have left this out. But I feel like that Mockingjay pin was so important to her character throughout the story. I mean, that becomes the symbol for the rebellion. That becomes the symbol for her. She is the Mockingjay. And I felt like they deserved to tell that story correctly, and I felt like they just kind of dropped the ball on that one. That would have been a really easy correction that they could have made, and it wouldn't have taken that much screen time. So, I don't know, that part just bothers me. Maybe that feels like a nitpicky detail to you, but to me it just felt like something that they really missed. The next thing is Katniss's backstory. She talks so much in the book about her father and her relationship with her father and how he taught her to hunt and he taught her to gather, and he's basically the reason that she really ultimately is able to keep her family afloat. And I felt like in the book we just know that he died and that caused problems. I mean, in the movie, he died and that caused problems, and I felt like that's really all we got to know. We didn't really get to know much beyond that. And so to me that felt like a miss because she talks so much about those things, and then some, you know, some of those things come up in the arena, things that she knows that her father taught her as well. And then also the extended details on her original encounter with Peeta, where he tosses her the bread. There was so much behind that. I don't think that they really did the best job of expressing exactly how bad her situation was at that point. Because while Jennifer Lawrence is, you know, sitting in the rain under a tree looking really sad, she doesn't exactly look like she's starving at that point, which she was supposed to be. And they had been, I think, drinking or eating mint leaves and hot water or something for a few days up to that point. I mean, she was supposed to be in a really bad way, and she just mostly looks uncomfortable. So I don't think that's her fault. I just don't think that they really went to the lengths that they probably should have to capture that feeling in that moment.
Although, can we just talk about how, you know, forget President Snow, forget the careers, you know, forget all of it. I mean, the most frightening character in this whole saga is definitely Peeta's mom. She's very frightening in that moment. Like, you know, I feared for his life. Honestly, it's pretty scary.
You're a goober.
Yeah, guilty.
The next thing is not really a specific detail so much as just sort of a general observation. Okay, this book is called The Hunger Games. And Katniss has lived her whole life hungry, and everyone is obsessed with food, and part of the reward for winning the games is getting food. And in the book, every time she encounters new food in the capital, she is mind blown at what's available and how good it is. She tastes hot chocolate for the first time on the train. She has that orange chicken dish that she falls in love with and tries to imagine how she could possibly recreate it with things that she has at home. And she has the lamb stew with the plums in it and all this stuff. And I mean, they're so specific and descriptive about all these things that I wish they had just taken even just one scene to really let her and Peeta both, because they both go through this, just be amazed and overeat. Because that's one of the very first things they do is they get on the train and they gorge themselves so much they're almost sick. Because everything is so amazing and they've got so much available that they've never had. And so I just felt like even if they had only taken a moment to do it, it would have been enough. Because I just don't think I don't think you get quite that impression of them being quite as hungry as they could have been.
It's almost as if, like, you know, whenever they're, I mean, and I may understand for the sake of plot, but any time that they have those moments where they're eating, the food is not even, it's almost an afterthought. Like, guys, but I think we specifically talked about the scene where, you know, they are first going on the train and they make a moment, they take a moment to pass over the food and to show, like, you know, how the food looks so ornate and all that, but they don't really, I mean, I think they really put Peeta and Katniss more in, like, shell shock mode instead of, you know, the other side of it, you know, where they would truly be like, I mean, sure, they would be, like, terrified because they understood why they're going to the capital, but you think that they would also have the moment where like, holy smokes,
Yeah,
it's
Katniss
crazy.
has spent, a large chunk of her life scavenging for food and having to hunt and eating still pretty mediocre food in a lot of cases, and now she's got everything she could ever possibly imagine and more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something that I think was a little bit of a miss there.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is one that bothers me because it comes up in another movie. Well, it really comes up in the next movie, but there are no careers in District 4 according to the movie. They just talk about careers being in Districts 1 and 2. And maybe they were just not banking on making another movie. Maybe they didn't think that was an important detail. But as you know, Finnick in the second movie is a career. He's District 4, and that was something that Katniss was deeply concerned about. And so they just kind of have to ignore it in the movie because they've already taken that out in the first one. So that was just a small detail that annoyed me. I mean, the characters from District 4 in the first book are not significant. They're just with them for a while until they both get killed off. But again, it's just one of those things that affects a later movie, and those things are always the type of things that bother me when it's got a ripple effect like that. The other thing that I would say was probably my biggest complaint when we initially watched this, I would say, is Katniss spends, 20-something, 30-something pages in this book looking for water after she gets to the games. She is, at death's door. She is miserable. She is dehydrated. She's, stumbling and hallucinating. And in the movie, she just runs off, and all of a sudden you see her, rub some moss on the ground, do this with some leaves, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, water! 2 minutes later.
I remember watching, when we saw it in the premiere, I think we did all 4 movies, midnight showing.
Yeah, we saw midnight showings of all 4.
I remember, walking out, yeah, it's great, love the movie, can't wait for Catching Fire. Wait a minute, water scene, come on, man. That was definitely the reaction.
Because that was the thing, is that she kept waiting, why won't Haymitch just send me some water? Surely a sponsor could have sent me some water. And she has this whole dialogue in her head about how she realizes that he's not sending her water because she must be close to water, even though she's really, really sick at that point. So yeah, I was, again, just frustrating. The next thing is what I briefly mentioned before about the brutality in the games. So I don't think we needed necessarily every death to be drawn out on camera, but there were some really specific moments that I felt like they dialed it down, maybe not too much, but they just dialed it down enough that it just kind of felt like it took some of the significance out of it. So one of the things was when Katniss knocks the Tracker Nest down on the careers, she gets stung by Tracker Jackers herself, which caused hallucinations. And her hallucinations in the book are absolutely horrific. I mean, she's thinking about horrible, awful things. She sees Glimmer's body, the Career 1 girl that she kills. She sees her and thinks that she's grabbed onto her spine, trying to flip her over and get the bow loose and the arrows, and there's things she's it's gotten caught on her shoulder blade, and then she's thinking there's these green pussing things are just popping all over her body where she got stung, and all these awful images. And she's hallucinating all of that, along with the things what are in the movie where she's thinking about her dad getting blown up in the mines and everything. But I felt like there was a lot of really disturbing imagery that they left out there that I think, again, just kind of dulled how serious the Tracker Jacker thing really seemed.
Which I, again, understand kind of why, because, probably, I mean, a lot of it may have to do, too, with not just artistic choices, but also what they figured they could get away with before that turns into an R-rated movie, because I feel like that is a movie that, thanks to cutting and, the way they cut certain scenes and the way that, they kind of dialed down some of that stuff there, that they probably realized, hey, look, this will get us away from an R rating.
Yeah.
Which for that story and selling to that audience, that would probably have been a death knell for that movie.
Yeah, which that also goes along probably with one of the other ones that I have written here, which was when Thresh kills Clove in the movie. He pretty much just shakes her, slams her against a wall, and she drops dead. But in the book, and I had forgotten this, so I was rereading this for this video, but he actually hits her in the head with a rock, and she kind of just he talks about her having this huge bash in her skull that Katniss is seeing. She falls to the ground and is basically just kind of laying there twitching for a significant portion of time. And while Katniss is having this talk with Thresh about the fact that she was with Rue and that he was going to let her go for that and all that. And so while that's going on, you hear Cato coming and trying to find her, And as Katniss is running away, she sees Cato come in and basically like sit with her in the last moments before she dies, while he sits with her like that, and then the cannon goes off. And I know, to me, that was another one of those moments where like that would have 100% made that a way more disturbing moment than it was in the movie. But I think it does a better job of showing how strong Thresh was, since they make such a big deal about that. I think that really showcases that a little bit. And then also just, I don't know, showing that Cato was a person too a little bit, because he was actually upset that she was dying. I mean, it wasn't like he was a completely heartless human. He'd just been raised with all the wrong values, and as far as the games were concerned. It's
definitely I think there's and this may be a whole different discussion, but there's definitely the case in this whole series, of nature versus nurture. What can, when conditioned, what can humanity be capable of? And I think, as we've seen throughout history, they can be capable of quite a few things. But one thing that, I know that it was neither in the book or the movie, but can somebody, can Suzanne Collins come back and write up like what happened in that Cato Thresh fight?
Yes.
Because, I mean, that thing had to be the throwdown of all throwdowns. Because, I mean, I was hoping whenever they made the movie that they would, flesh that out. And then they didn't. So, oh, man, that had to just be killer. Oh, man.
Well, I'd say perspective-wise, that the arena is probably where they took the least amount of liberties with things, because that was the one area where they could afford to just have Katniss's point of view for that whole portion. There was really no reason for them to show us anything that she didn't see.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I can see why it didn't happen, but, yeah, that would definitely have been interesting. Speaking of Cato's death at the end is portrayed a little bit differently, definitely more quickly in the movie. And I think this actually says more about Katniss's character than Cato's. But they knock him off of the cornucopia, which you see in the movie, that she shoots his hand and Peeta knocks him off and he falls, and then he's getting eaten by the dogs. And in the movie, she pretty much immediately just takes an arrow, shoots him, and puts him out of his misery. But in the book, she is so reticent to kill anybody else that she tries to avoid it and just assumes that the dogs eventually are going to finish him off. But they lay there all night long on top of the cornucopia listening to this while he's just laying down there not dying, just
getting gnawed to death.
Yeah, because he was supposed to have like head to toe body armor on at that point. And at one point she finally realizes that there's no way the game makers are going to let anybody kill him but her, so she finally takes him out. So I think that was another one of those moments where it was a lot of Katniss's character there, that she was trying not to do it. But she does show him mercy, but it's just that she really didn't want to kill anyone if she didn't have to. And then there's the part of Katniss and Peeta's injuries throughout the games, which again are things that should have come up in other books. So Peeta lost his leg through his injury from the games, and a lot of that had to do with some of that stuff at the cornucopia at the end, which I won't go into detail on, but he doesn't lose his leg, which is a pretty big story point for the last part of the book, actually, because Katniss didn't know that it happened. And then Katniss is also supposed to go deaf in one ear from blowing up. When she blows up the pile of supplies, the blast gets one of her eardrums, and so she can't hear out of it the rest of the story, and she struggles because she keeps wanting to favor that side, trying to hear like she's used to hearing in the woods. And in Catching Fire, that's supposed to come back, and she's supposed to be able to hear that force field in the arena. And so they kind of had to story tell around that and come up with the idea of this shimmering thing that she learns from Beetee and Wiress, and they had to work around that a bit. But because she's supposed to get fixed and her ear is almost kind of bionic at that point, and she has super hearing in the one ear. So that's another one of those things that really more annoys me, because they come back later, but because they already left it out here, they couldn't do it later. So it just kind of felt like we messed up things for the future a little bit.
I think, and they did kind of, the weird thing is they did actually, in the deleted scenes, they do allude to it for a little bit.
They do, yeah, I forgot about that.
Which is kind of weird. They do show like where, like she's clearly got the ring in her ears, but then it comes back. I guess she's fine. So it's like they almost just stop just short, which is even, I think, weirder in a way. So yeah, you do get some ear ringing in the theatrical version where she is trying to walk away and her ears are ringing, but you don't get the deafness. But in that deleted scene, yeah, she's rustling the leaves by her ears trying to test her hearing. But yeah, apparently it either miraculously came back, or they didn't film whatever else was supposed to be associated with that scene. So
The other thing that I felt like was a really Katniss-defining moment that they leave out there at the end is after Claudius Temple-Smith comes back over the speaker and says, "Just kidding, two victors can't go home. There's only one, so, you know, may the odds be ever in your favor." She turns to Peeta and immediately draws her bow, planning to take him out because she thinks she's got to get home. And she just watches him pitch his knife off to the side, and he has no intention of touching her. And she has this huge moment of shame where she can't believe she was about to do that after all they'd been through. And again, that was a very Katniss defining moment, I think. And they go through so much in the next couple of books talking about how Haymitch doesn't think she'll ever be good enough for him and how she doesn't think she'll ever be good enough for him. And I felt like that was one moment where they kind of proved that in a way, where she really got to show that, and they just left that out. And I felt like that was such a quick thing they could have easily put in there, but you know, you never know why they make these decisions, but they do. And then my last one is another just kind of in general type thing, but I felt like they purposely made her more intentionally rebellious in the movie versus the book, whereas in the book it seems very much like she's just out to save her own skin and get home, and that's pretty much it, and then, you know, ends up helping Peeta as well, but really has no intention toward the Capitol itself. And I felt like in the movie they slanted it for sure, so it seemed like she was a little bit more intentionally doing these things to kind of stick it to the Capitol. So that was just a minor complaint, but I just felt like that did change her character a bit, I think. So the last thing I wanted to talk about were just some of the things that happen outside of Katniss's perspective. So like I said before, the book is told in first person, so we don't get anything that Katniss doesn't see and hear. In the movie, because that would be a very boring movie if we only ever followed her, we get some actual stuff that happened elsewhere. I think they did a good job of choosing where that was going to be significant enough to spend their time on. So some of the things in the Capitol, they show all the crazy betting that goes on. I mean, Senna mentions at one point in the book that, you know, or maybe it's just the movie that he talks about that. But anyway, they talk about betting taking place on the tributes at some point in the book, but you don't ever really see it. But they actually, you can, if you pause it, it's actually pretty interesting to look at some of the odds on the tributes and stuff if you're nerdy enough to take the time to look at it.
Which we are.
Oh yes, of course. Channel name.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that you can see the betting, and that's actually pretty interesting to see how they had done that and sort of created those numbers for the specific part in the movie. And then along with that, you also see the kids in the Capitol getting weapons as gifts before the Hunger Games start, and they're pretend fighting and like running around chasing each other, and that is such a stark contrast. I mean, it's like making, like, I don't know, kids playing war while an actual war is going on almost. It's sad.
Absolutely.
And then you also see the Game Maker's headquarters, which I had an epiphany about the last time we watched it. And I swear I've probably watched this movie like 24 times. But we were watching the Game Maker's headquarters, and I always laugh because I always think they put a lot of goofy looking people in those headquarters, you know, running all the computers and stuff. And then it hit me as we were watching it this last time. I wonder if those people were supposed to be from District 3. Where Beatty and Wirus were from Catching Fire. They're supposed to be like all the technology people and stuff, because none of them look like Capitol people.
No,
they don't
that's
have.
very true.
They don't have any of the crazy hair, the crazy clothes, the crazy like cosmetic makeup, anything. They look like totally normal people. And so I kind of wondered if a lot of those weren't District 3 people put in charge of the tech. So I don't know, something to think about. Just throwing it out there.
So if Suzanne Collins, if you're watching this, if you're watching this video, you know, just give us a comment and just let us know so we can, you know, build out that world a little bit more. Yeah, just, you know, make it happen.
We also get to see the commentators of the game. So we get to see Caesar Flickerman and Claudius Temple-Smith are commentating the game so that the people at home get, you know, the extra, you know, information, which is another really great ploy they use to replace narration from the book. So there's tons of stuff that Katniss can explain to us in narration that obviously, again, you're not going to sit there and let somebody explain all that for 20 minutes. So they do a good job of just throwing those commentators in at certain points during the games to explain the stuff that we don't know. Especially if someone hasn't read this book and is going in to watch the movie, it's super helpful. Which,
you know, plus having Caesar Flickerman more on screen, I think.
More Stanley Tucci, yes.
More Stanley Tucci is a huge plus because, I mean, he steals the show almost. I mean, when he's on screen, it's you know, hysterical and sad and
he's another one I'm pretty sure who gunned for his own role.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, the more I figure, you know, it's almost a win-win in that situation. You know, you get this character and this actor on screen more, and you get to kind of tell some of the backstory that you're going to lose to the first-person narration.
You also get to see some stuff with Haymitch during this part that you don't normally get to see. And so Katniss thinks a lot during the games in the book about how, what is Haymitch doing? Is he getting these sponsors? And then every time he sends a gift, she's always trying to imagine what he was trying to tell her with that gift. And so in this movie, we actually get to see him going after sponsors in response to her getting hurt by the fireball. He feels bad. He's trying to go and get help for her. And then we also get to see once it's time, once PETA is hurt and they decide to put the temporary rule in where they can go home if they're from the same district. We actually see in the movie that Haymitch orchestrates that. He basically goes to Seneca Crane and says, look, you want to stop a rebellion? Young love. And I thought that was really cool because I think that you had to wonder to some extent how Haymitch becomes one of the rebels in the next book, and you have to sort of see how that happens. And I think it's cool to see the kind of pieces laid in place a little bit in this movie, more so than we get to see in the book.
And you think it, on the face of it, it would just seem more like a director or screenwriter actually just dropping that in. Hey, let's connect the dots a little bit. But the fact that Suzanne Collins had a significant part in kind of the crafting of this does kind of give you a little bit more that probably. Here, like, we're just kind of seeing what was actually going on behind the scenes. That's the way I choose to look at that scene anyway.
Some other things you get to see President Snow a lot more. So, I mean, basically in the book, you only see him, I think, all of them maybe seeing him on TV a couple of times, and then at the end when she gets crowned, and then, and at the parade, when they do their like, parade with the costumes and stuff. So you don't see an exceptional lot of him in the book, but I think it was a good addition for the movie, again, because it just gives you some additional information, and I think does some good character building for later books, because he's one that actually worked in reverse. Instead of it being a miss, it's a hit, because it's building for later books that we kind of don't get to see him as much until later in there.
Plus, you kind of get the idea with Seneca Crane that it wasn't just the fact of the Barry situation at the end that got him killed. It was clearly an escalation where he was looking for entertainment, but Snow was like, no, you need to be very careful with what you're doing. And then when that moment happened, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back as far as that, Seneca Crane decided to stop breathing.
Yes. According to Philip Seymour Hoffman in movie 2. So
exactly.
And then the other thing, this is something that is technically a miss in a way, but when Rue dies in the book, Katniss gets a gift of bread from the District 11 people, and it's a big deal to her. Well, in the movie, they don't take the time to do all of that. There is actually a deleted scene that shows it, though. So again, if you have this particular set of the movies, then this set.
Yeah.
If you have that set, that one disc again has a deleted scene where it actually shows them sending her the bread. But in the movie, what we see in the theatrical version is her, crying over Rue, and then you see District 11 just go crazy. They immediately have a riot and they start attacking peacekeepers, and everything goes crazy. And I think again that's kind of leaving breadcrumbs for the next movie a little bit. So it's kind of a cool little Easter egg in a way to get to see that instead of just seeing her get the bread and really not going into anything else. And then the last thing is just getting to see a little bit of the people at home getting to watch her on TV. So we briefly see a shot or two of her mother and Prim watching her, but the most significant thing probably is Gale getting to watch her, because I think his relationship with her doesn't have as much time to get established in the movie because they don't really want to spend a lot of time with her in District 12, and that's really not the point of the movie. And so you get to see his discomfort at watching her with PETA, her reactions to PETA, her trying to save him, and all of that. And there's actually, although at the very first when the games start, they show everybody watching, and Gale is sitting out in the middle of the woods and will not have anything to do with it. So I thought that was also a cool kind of call out to his character, kind of showing that because he talked about in the beginning, what if nobody watched, and so he purposely made a point not to at the beginning until he could
followed through on it.
So that was a cool little Easter egg. But I would say overall, this book, it was well adapted into this movie. I cannot say that about every movie adaptation for sure, but I think the movies do a really great job with these books. I think as you go along, because of certain choices they made in the first movie, that probably the last three movies, but last two book adaptations are maybe a little less accurate in spots. But overall, again, these are movies that I adore and we have watched way too many times.
Absolutely.
And will definitely continue to watch, but I think that they're worth it.
So yeah, I mean, it was we, like I said, like she nailed it. We love these movies. They're definitely on the repeat watch list. You know, we go through them a couple 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll definitely be going through the rest of these, the rest of the books versus the movies. We'll also be doing other book series, I'm sure. You know, this was a lot of fun.
So if you have any requests, drop them down below. Although I promise you, if you put Stephen King, it's not happening. I cannot read Stephen King.
And not because of subject matter or anything. It's really dense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an English teacher, and I know a lot of people love Stephen King. I have a lot of students that love to read Stephen King. It's just not mine. So don't put that in the comments. But if you have other books, especially other YA books, I tend to like to do those, then please let me know what you're interested in doing down below, and I will try and see if I can accommodate you.
Absolutely. So that's our look at the Hunger Games hits and misses. Really hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, give a like. Like I said, like Michelle said, comment on the video. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if you agree or disagree. You know, is there anything we missed? Also, you can let us know that as well. You know, if you love the channel, like what we're doing on it, you know, give us a subscription. Click that bell icon. Let us know, or so that we can let you know when those videos are coming out. And other than that, I am Chris.
And I'm Michelle.
And you guys have a good one, and we'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.